"You have no right to block our pipeline, Grandpa." That's what the HOA president said to my face, like I was some senile old man guarding a puddle with a broom. Funny thing is I'm not her grandpa, and that puddle she was talking about? It was the only source of water feeding her whole shiny little $200,000 fantasy. My name's Garrett Murphy. I'm 58, divorced, retired. Well, retired, in the way a guy retires after 30 years as a civil engineer designing water systems and thinks life will finally stop calling him back into emergencies. After my divorce carved up my savings like a Thanksgiving turkey and left me sitting in an apartment that smelled like other people's microwaved fish, I needed quiet. Real quiet. The kind you can hear. So I moved to my grandfather's place, 47 acres tucked into a Colorado valley that still looked like it belonged to time, not money. He'd converted an old barn into a workshop years ago, wood beams blackened with age, tool benches scarred from decades of use, windows that caught the morning light like they were trying to forgive you for being late to life. The first morning there, I stood on the deck with a mug of coffee and listened. No traffic, no sirens, no neighbors practicing their divorce through drywall. Just loons calling across Lake Willow while mist crawled off the surface like a slow exhale. Pine-scented air, cold enough to wake you up from the inside out. I remember thinking, finally, peace. Except peace has a way of getting rezoned. Lake Willow wasn't just pretty. It was fed by mountain springs, about 40,000 gallons of crystal-clear water, circulating through the valley like a heartbeat. My grandfather used to tell stories about how the Ute tribes considered the springs sacred, how settlers fought over access rights back when Colorado was still figuring out what it wanted to be. 3 generations of Murphys had protected that lake, managed it, kept it clean, kept it flowing. It wasn't ours in the selfish sense. It was ours in the stewardship sense, like you're holding something valuable for the people who come after you. Then, in 2019, the McMansion invasion happened. A developer bought the adjacent farmland and crammed 47 houses onto lots barely big enough for their 3-car garages. Overnight, my quiet valley became a neighborhood that needed rules for the rules. And with those rules came an HOA with opinions about everything. Enter Vivian Blackwood. Picture her, 52, former pharmaceutical sales rep, the kind of woman who treats every conversation like she's trying to close a deal with a hostage. White Mercedes that stayed spotless even on dirt roads, like it was allergic to reality. She carried a clipboard everywhere. Grocery store, church, her own driveway. That clipboard wasn't paperwork, it was a weapon. First time I met her, it was a Saturday morning at 8 a.m., because of course it was. I heard the click-click-click of designer heels walking across my gravel like someone tapping a fork on a dinner plate. I stepped out of the workshop, and there she was, smiling too hard. "Mr. Murphy," she said, voice sharp and nasal. Vivian Blackwood, HOA president. "We have exciting plans." She laid out glossy drawings like she was unveiling a luxury yacht. The project was called Willowbrook Falls, an artificial waterfall with LED lighting and decorative stonework that looked like a Vegas hotel threw up in a Home Depot aisle. Benches, bridges, walking paths, the whole thing designed to make people feel rich for standing near moving water. "We're planning a community water feature to boost everyone's property values," she said, tapping the page with a manicured nail. "Preliminary survey shows optimal flow from your lovely pond directly to our community park. We just need a tiny easement, maybe 30 feet, to run the pipeline." Tiny easement. Like I should thank her for only stealing part of my family's legacy. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just said it plainly. "Mrs. Blackwood, I'm not interested in any easement discussions." And oh, there it was. The mask slipped for about 3 seconds. Those friendly eyes went cold, like a freezer door opening. Then the smile snapped back into place like a bear trap resetting. "Well," she said, syrupy, "once you understand how this benefits the entire community, I'm sure you'll reconsider. A man of your background must appreciate efficient land use." My background, like being a civil engineer, meant I didn't understand property lines. She handed me a folder thick as a phone book, impact studies, community benefit analyses, graphs and charts designed to make theft sound like charity. Her perfume was overpowering, floral and aggressive, clashing with the clean pine scent around my workshop. Even after she left, I swear it lingered on my hands like a threat that wouldn't wash off. That night I called my friend Rebecca Stone, local attorney, college buddy, sharp as a blade and allergic to bullies. "Rebecca," I said, "what do you know about water rights in Colorado?" There was a pause. "Why?" she asked. What kind of trouble are you in now? The expensive kind. HOA wants an easement for a pipeline off my lake. Another pause, longer this time. Garrett, your grandfather was water commissioner for this valley, wasn't he? Yeah, I said, for like 40 years. She murmured. I'll check county records tomorrow. Something tells me Vivian Blackwood hasn't done her homework. 10 days later, the certified letter arrived, thick envelope, gold-embossed legal letterhead from Sterling and Associates, the kind of law firm that charges you for breathing near their stapler. 3 pages of legal jargon about eminent domain proceedings and public benefit water access rights, claiming the HOA had authority to acquire necessary easements through judicial process. Translation: give us your land or we'll steal it in court. The packet included renderings of their finished waterfall, complete with decorative bridges spanning my property line. My land. Their theme park. I called Rebecca again. They can't do this, right? Let me see the letter, she said. Papers rustled on her end. Sterling and Associates, oh, I remember these clowns. Judge threw out their eminent domain claim in 15 minutes on the Henderson drainage case. HOAs can't just declare themselves government entities when they feel like it. Sterling lost so badly the judge sanctioned them. Suddenly Vivian's scary legal threat looked like a paper tiger wearing an expensive suit. And here's the thing about engineers. When someone threatens you with fake authority, you counter with real documentation. Next morning I went to the county courthouse. Old limestone building that smelled like dust and decades of bureaucratic battles. I told the clerk, I need every property record for the Murphy land dating back to 1924. The woman behind the counter, Mrs. Henderson, actually lit up. Murphy, she said. You're Tom Murphy's grandson. She disappeared into basement archives and came back pushing boxes that looked like they hadn't seen daylight in years. Deeds, water right certificates, survey maps, hand-drawn fountain pen, the whole history of my family stacked like ammunition. Colorado water law is basically one brutal sentence. First in time, first in right. Whoever established rights first wins. Period. Doesn't matter what gets built later. Senior rights are bulletproof. My family's certificate dated 1931. Vivian's development? Built 2019. 88-year head start. Legal game over. But then I found the real bombshell, buried in a 1987 professional survey Vivian's people apparently never bothered to read. Lake Willow sat entirely on Murphy property. Not 1 inch crossed into disputed territory. Every drop feeding their precious pipeline belonged to me. So I built my response like an engineering report. Timeline of harassment, photos of unauthorized survey stakes, copies of every threatening communication, plus the historical water rights proof. 1 page, simple, clean, deadly. Lake Willow and all associated water rights remain exclusively on private Murphy property. Any pipeline construction without written easement constitutes trespass, and theft of natural resources. Further unauthorized access will be prosecuted. I hand-delivered copies to the county planning office, the sheriff's department, and Vivian herself. Walking up her driveway, hearing gravel crunch under my boots, felt like planting a flag. Her retaliation came fast and vicious. Emergency HOA meetings about my obstructionist behavior. Rumors that I was hoarding water during drought, sabotaging families, destroying property values. HOA members started driving past my gate at a crawl, photographing my property like I was running a criminal operation. Diesel exhaust became my morning alarm clock. Then code enforcement showed up at my door, anonymous complaints about unpermitted structures, septic violations, commercial activity. My workshop was a 1952 grandfathered building that had survived every inspection for 70 years. I handed the officer the original permits, and he flipped through them, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Sir, he finally said, these appear legitimate. Who filed the complaint? I asked. Anonymous tip line. Anonymous my ass. And that's when the story took its first real turn, because that officer called me later that night. Garrett, he said, this is Danny Morrison. My stomach tightened. Danny? Yeah, he said, you worked on the Denver water expansion with me 15 years ago. Didn't recognize you at first. Danny had switched careers after his own divorce, ended up in code enforcement. And he didn't call to chat. Listen, he said, voice low, your HOA submitted paperwork for major water infrastructure. They listed Vivian Blackwood as a certified water rights consultant. I actually laughed, one sharp, humorless bark. She sells pharmaceuticals. Exactly, Danny said. But here's the kicker. She claimed Lake Willow straddles your property line, giving the HOA partial access rights. I saw your survey today. That's fiction. Filing false government documents. That's the moment my anger turned into something colder, something strategic. Because this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was fraud. Rebecca helped me file records requests. The paper trail was filthy. Vivian had been running a three-way con, telling the county she had unanimous HOA approval, telling the HOA the county had pre-approved access, telling contractors she had guaranteed unlimited water with municipal backing. None of it true. And the money? HOA budget records showed project costs mysteriously jumping from $90,000 to $180,000 without member notification. Emails showed Vivian giving different contractors wildly different numbers, inflating estimates, skimming management fees. She wasn't just trying to steal my water. She was bleeding her own neighbors dry while calling it community improvement. That's when a few residents started approaching me quietly, like people sneaking out of a cult meeting. Sandra Walsh, mom of twin toddlers, worried about construction safety. The elderly Kowalskis mentioned their property taxes had spiked after enhancement rumors hit the assessor's office. Not everyone in that development was a villain, some were just trapped inside Vivian's sales pitch. Meanwhile, Vivian's personal harassment escalated into stalking. I installed a hunting camera near my gate. 3 days later I had photos, her white Mercedes parked at my property line before dawn, her silhouette behind the windshield with a telephoto lens. That coffee tasted bitter in my mouth, not because it was bad, because I realized she wasn't trying to win a disagreement. She was trying to break me. But then came the twist I didn't see coming, the one that flipped the whole board. My phone rang one evening, and a man introduced himself. "Mr. Murphy," he said, "this is Jake Henley. I'm a licensed private investigator. I need to talk to you about Vivian Blackwood." My heart dropped. "Why are you calling me?" "Because she hired me to dig up dirt on you," he said, "and when I told her you're clean, she offered me $5,000 to fabricate evidence, gambling debts, tax problems, whatever would stick." I went quiet. "You're serious?" "I'm serious," Jake said. "And small world. Rebecca Stone is my ex-wife. She doesn't know I'm calling, but this woman is dangerous." That was the moment I realized Vivian wasn't just power-hungry, she was reckless. The kind of reckless that leaves fingerprints. Jake also told me Vivian had been approaching other rural property owners, anyone with water features, pressuring them into partnerships that transferred resource rights to HOA control. 2 families had already buckled just to make the harassment stop. So we built an alliance, quietly at first. A retired judge named Patricia Herrera. A contractor, Mike Santos. An organic farmer, Elena Rodriguez, who understood irrigation law like it was scripture. We met at Rebecca's office on Wednesday nights, drinking cheap coffee and turning Vivian's chaos into a case file. And then Rebecca found the smoking gun. Buried in old records was a leather-bound folder marked Murphy Valley Development Agreement, 1924. Inside was a formal agreement naming the Murphy family as perpetual water commissioners for the entire watershed, authority to regulate, divert, or restrict water flow for conservation purposes in perpetuity. Rebecca's hands actually trembled holding it. "Garrett," she whispered, "do you understand what this means?" I swallowed. It means she picked the wrong guy. Because Lake Willow wasn't decorative, it was flood control. My grandfather had built outflow infrastructure that prevented seasonal flooding downstream, including that fancy McMansion development. Without controlled drainage, their subdivision sat in a natural floodplain that would turn into a swamp every spring. Their homes existed because my family managed the water, and the agreement included emergency drainage procedures if construction threatened water quality. Meaning if Vivian's pipeline project threatened the watershed, I could legally drain the lake completely and prevent refilling until the threat ended. So I made a decision that felt almost sinful in its patience. I didn't reveal that authority immediately. I let Vivian commit. I let her sign contracts, order materials, schedule ceremonies, burn through HOA money like it was monopoly cash. I let her dig her own financial grave because stopping her wasn't enough. She needed to be exposed so thoroughly she couldn't crawl back into power with a new clipboard. I spent 2 weeks doing what looked like routine fall maintenance on the outflow system, installing solar-powered remote valves disguised as environmental monitoring gear. Simple tech, elegant as gravity. One app on my phone could turn her guaranteed water source into an empty mud bowl within 48 hours. November 15th, 6:47 a.m. I pressed the button. 18 miles away, valves opened silently in the dark. By the time construction crews arrived, the lake was dropping fast, 18 inches an hour. Radio chatter started. Confusion turned to panic. At 7:15, Tom Bradley, the construction project manager, called Vivian, then called me. "Mr. Murphy," he said, voice tight, "your neighbor's telling us this water supply is guaranteed. But the lake dropped 4 feet overnight. We can't run pipeline to an empty hole." I told him calmly, "You should probably stop digging." By noon, Lake Willow looked like a moonscape, mud basin, exposed rocks, expensive equipment parked around it like idiots at the wrong address. Vivian called an emergency HOA meeting at 2 p.m. The community center packed, so tight it felt like a courtroom on verdict day. Local news crews showed up, sniffing out drama like sharks. Vivian stood at the podium, eyes wild behind that practiced smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "we're experiencing coordinated environmental terrorism designed to sabotage our community enhancement project." And then she pointed at me like she was starring in her own bad movie. "This man has illegally drained our water source." Rebecca squeezed my arm. "Go," she whispered. I stood slowly, letting silence spread. I felt every year of my engineering career settle into my voice, steady, controlled, unshakable. "Mrs. Blackwood," I said, "I'd like to introduce myself properly." I held up the 1924 agreement. "My name is Garrett Murphy, and I am the legally appointed water commissioner for this entire watershed. This authority predates your HOA by nearly a century." The room gasped. Vivian's face drained of color faster than her precious lake. "Under this agreement," I continued, "I have legal authority to regulate, divert, or restrict water flow for conservation purposes. Your pipeline project threatens watershed integrity. So I exercised emergency drainage protocols this morning, legally." Rebecca began handing copies to the news crews. Judge Herrera stood from the back row like thunder in human form. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said, voice cutting through the chaos, "Mr. Murphy's actions are lawful. If anyone is in legal danger here, it's the party filing false documents and misusing community funds." Right on cue, Sheriff Martinez walked in, called by Vivian's frantic terrorism report. Danny Morrison was with him, and you could see instantly the sheriff already knew who the real problem was. "Ma'am," the sheriff said flat, "Mr. Murphy has provided documentation. No crime has been committed." Vivian tried one last desperate speech, talking about lawsuits, extremists, property values, until HOA members started shouting back about missing money, unauthorized contracts, special assessments they'd never approved. And that's when her kingdom collapsed, not because I drained a lake, but because her own people finally realized she'd been draining them. She stormed out. 2 days later, the HOA board voted unanimously to remove her. An emergency audit revealed tens of thousands in unauthorized spending, conflicts of interest with her husband's insurance agency, falsified filings. Charges followed: fraud, attempted bribery, false reports, conspiracy to obtain property through deception. Contractors pulled out, cancellation fees nuked the HOA's enhancement budget for years. Her husband lost county contracts. Their white Mercedes? Gone, sold to pay legal fees. And Lake Willow? It refilled in 3 days, springs doing what springs do, quietly restoring what greed tried to steal. Families gathered near the shore like it was a holiday, kids laughing, parents exhaling. The valley sounded like itself again. Sitting on my deck that night, watching starlight shimmer on the water, I finally understood the lesson my grandfather tried to teach without ever putting it into words. Rights aren't real just because they're written down. They're real because someone is willing to enforce them calmly, patiently, with proof. Power doesn't always come from money or loud voices or a clipboard. Sometimes it comes from history, from stewardship, from knowing the system better than the people trying to game it. Vivian thought she was stealing from one old man. She was actually picking a fight with a century of receipts. So here's the question I can't stop thinking about, and I want you to weigh in when someone abuses power to take what isn't theirs. Where's the line between defending yourself and giving them a taste of consequences they'll never forget? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me who was right, who was wrong, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA bully, a neighborhood Karen, or anyone who tried to strong-arm you out of what you earned, share your story. I'm genuinely curious, because I have a feeling Vivian Blackwood isn't the only one out there.